I couldn't believe what my stepmom did to me while I was sleeping that night. I had a weird mix of feelings. On one hand, I felt super calm, almost happy, as if everything was perfect, but at the same time there was this tiny part of me that was nervous, like I knew something strange was going on. It was such a strange mix of emotions that I didn't know how to explain it. I had been working on my thesis all week and I was so tired that I barely had any energy left. Every day felt long and I was constantly busy trying to get everything done. By the time I got home, I didn't even think about having dinner with my dad and stepmom because all I wanted to do was sleep. I quickly said hi to both of them, but I didn't stay to chat. I asked them if it was okay for me to skip dinner and go straight to my room. I explained how tired I was from working so hard on my thesis. They both understood what I was going through and they didn't mind at all. It felt good to know they were okay with me not joining them for dinner. I didn't want to seem rude, but I just couldn't stay up any longer. After talking to them, I went straight to my bed, ready to get some much-needed rest. It was such a relief to know they supported me during this busy time. As soon as my back hit the bed, I fell asleep right away. I had never been so tired and it felt amazing to finally rest. It was one of the best feelings ever, just being in my bed after such a long and exhausting week. I could feel my whole body relaxing, and for the first time in days I felt truly happy. But that peaceful moment was then replaced with ecstasy. Out of nowhere, my stepmom came into my room. I didn't hear her at first because I was already half asleep, but suddenly I could sense someone was there. At first I didn't think much of it, but it was strange that she would come in so late. I didn't expect anyone to be in my room at that hour. Neither my dad nor I knew she had come into my room. My dad had already fallen asleep just like me, so he didn't notice. It felt weird knowing she came in after everyone else was sleeping. I wasn't sure why she did it, but it was definitely something that caught me off guard. She quietly snuck over to my bed and gently touched my hand. I could sense that something wasn't right, but my body was so tired and all I wanted was to sleep. My eyes were heavy and my mind was foggy, so I didn't bother to open my eyes or move. It was easier to just stay still and let myself drift off, thinking it was probably nothing important. But then something really surprising happened. My stepmom lifted my shirt and I felt something cold against my skin. It turned out that she was teasing me, and she was doing it so gently. The cold sensation made me shiver, and my half-asleep brain was confused. I couldn't believe what was happening. The freezing sensation against my skin was such a shock, and it made everything feel so strange at that moment. The coldness of it even made my package react instantly. My muscles tensed up and it felt like a jolt went through me. Of course she noticed what was happening. She took advantage of the situation and gently stroked my package. When she did that, I felt a wave of panic because I realized something was seriously wrong. I had a feeling that something wasn't right when she first touched my hand, but this made it even clearer. But to be completely honest, my body actually liked it. After a long and tiring week of working on my thesis, I think my body was really in need of a gentle touch. It had been such a stressful time, and I didn't realize how much I was craving something comforting. My body seemed to respond positively, like it was looking for a way to relax and feel good. What was surprising, though, was that the touch came from my stepmom. I wasn't expecting her to be the source of this comfort. It was odd because I had never thought of my stepmom in this way before, and it made the situation feel even more unusual. And if you think she was done, oh boy, you're way off. She held my hands up and kept on teasing me while giving my package a nice little stroke. Honestly, it felt like she knew exactly what she was doing, almost like an expert. She had perfect timing and knew exactly when I was about to blow up, and that's when she kicked things into high gear. As I reached the climax, she made it even faster. It was like she was racing against time. My mind was kind of blown by how everything lined up so perfectly. I felt like a wild ride that I wasn't expecting, but man, it was definitely something else. And yes, after reaching the climax, it felt so good that something overflowed, and I could even feel it in my hands and legs. The whole thing was out of control, but in a way that I didn't mind too much. I woke up that morning feeling so refreshed and alive. It was like a brand new start to the day. I was still trying to figure out if what happened was just a dream or if it actually took place in real life, and everything felt so vivid and clear. But I Wasn't sure if it was real or just in my imagination, even though I wasn't completely sure about what happened. I knew that I really loved the experience. It was one of those things that felt amazing and I couldn't stop thinking about it. If someone gave me the opportunity to go through it once more, I would definitely take it. The whole experience was something I enjoyed and found exciting. It left me with a sense of wanting more, and I knew I would be happy to try it again if I could. As I was heading downstairs, I saw my stepmom busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen. It was kind of strange because my dad is usually the one who's on time for meals, even more so than me, but that morning he was missing and only my stepmom was there. The breakfast table was already set with delicious food: pancakes, eggs, and bacon ready to be eaten. The smell of the food was inviting, but it felt odd not to see my dad at the table. It was like something was off, and I couldn't figure out why he wasn't there with us. My stepmom seemed calm and focused on getting everything ready, but it made me wonder where my dad had gone. I tried not to let it bother me too much, but it was unusual not to see him there, especially when he's always been so punctual. It made me think about what could have happened and why he was missing from our breakfast routine. When she saw me coming down the stairs, our eyes met and she gave me a big smile. It was a little strange because she looked so happy, like nothing unusual had happened at all. I felt a bit unsure and nervous, but I could tell right away that it wasn't just a dream. It had really happened. It was a moment of realization that made me feel uneasy, even though I was still trying to process what had happened. My stepmom acted like everything was perfectly normal. She didn't seem bothered or awkward about it, and that made me feel a bit more relaxed. Her calm demeanor helped me feel like maybe it was okay to move on and not make a big deal out of it. Since she seemed completely unfazed and treated the morning like an ordinary day, I decided to just go with it. I sat down and started eating my breakfast, trying to focus on the delicious food in front of me. It was easier to just enjoy the meal and not think too much about the strange events of the previous night. Later that day, I got out of class earlier than usual because our professor had an important meeting to go to. It was nice to have some extra time, but there was also a bit of worry. Our professor reminded us that we needed to be ready for our thesis defense, which was scheduled for the next day. She made it very clear that if we weren't prepared to present our thesis on that day, we would not be able to graduate on time. The thought of not graduating on schedule made me feel a bit anxious. I knew how important it was to have everything ready and to do a good job, so I rushed home as quickly as I could because I needed to get ready for my thesis defense. As soon as I walked through the door, I went straight to my room and grabbed my laptop. I was determined to focus all my energy on preparing for the big day. I wanted to make sure nothing distracted me so I could do the best job possible. I knew that my father had worked incredibly hard day and night to give me a good education. I didn't want to let him down or become a disappointment. Not meeting his expectations made me even more determined to get everything right. I felt a lot of pressure to make sure my thesis was perfect. I knew that preparing well was crucial and I couldn't afford to take it lightly. I put all my effort into organizing my presentation and reviewing my notes. This was a very important moment and I wanted to be ready to show everyone that I had put in the hard work and deserved to graduate on time. I was so focused on my work that I didn't even notice my stepmom had somehow ended up behind me as I was busy with my preparations. I suddenly felt the touch on my shoulder. When I turned around and saw her, it made me remember what happened last night, and I felt a mix of surprise and confusion. She seemed to know just what to do. She placed her index finger on my lips, stopping me from saying anything. It was almost like it was trying to comfort me or give me a bit of reassurance. She spoke to me in a calming way, telling me that everything would be all right. She also mentioned that no one else was home right now and that my dad would be late because he had a meeting with a client. Hearing this made me feel a bit better. My heart was racing so fast that I could almost hear it pounding in my ears. I wanted to relive the feelings from last night, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. As I sat there trying to focus, she suddenly moved and placed herself on my lap. She started to stroke my hair in a soft way, which was both surprising and comforting. She did something to me that I'd never felt before. She did something to my lips and tongue, and even though it was a bit strange, it felt surprisingly soft, almost like cotton. The whole experience was new and confusing, but also oddly comforting. I knew for sure that she was trying to recreate the soothing feeling from last night in a completely different way. When she noticed that my package was starting to feel the heat, she began moving up and down. Each time she did this, my heart raced even faster. I could feel my package getting warmer, and it felt so good that I didn't wanted to stop. Her movement made everything seem more intense and exciting now. She seemed to enjoy this interaction because she wanted me to touch her package too. At first I was a bit unsure, but I decided to go ahead and do it. As soon as I touched them, I could feel my package was reacting even more. The warmth and the sensation were really strong, making me feel like I was part of something special. It was my first time touching those, and the experience was unlike anything I had felt before. My package continued to rise and heat up, and I was fascinated by how her actions changed everything. I didn't want this feeling to end, as it was both new and incredibly enjoyable. But then, out of nowhere, I suddenly remembered my dad. The thought of him hit me hard while we were still in the middle of the ACT. I didn't want to hurt him, and it made me feel like what was happening wasn't right. So I spoke up and told her that we needed to stop because this wasn't something we should be doing. To my surprise, she didn't argue or get upset. She seemed to understand what I was feeling, even though she clearly had some feelings for me. She also loved my father deeply. That love for him made her realize that continuing this would hurt him, and she didn't want that any more than I did. We both knew stopping was the best thing to do. It wasn't easy, but we cared too much about my dad to let this go any further. Even though it was a confusing moment, it was clear that we had to think about the bigger picture and not just our own feelings. So we stopped just in time, because my dad came home from work not long after. It felt like a close call, and I was relieved that we had decided to stop when we did. From that moment on, both my stepmom and I made a promise to never talk about what happened again. We didn't want to hurt my dad, and we knew that keeping it a secret was the best way to protect him. Even though we never spoke about it, we both knew that things would never be the same between us. What happened left a mark that couldn't be erased. Every time we saw each other, there was this silent understanding, a feeling that things had changed. It wasn't something we could just forget, but we tried our best to act like everything was normal. Deep down, though, we knew that our relationship had shifted. We could pretend on the outside, but inside we both knew the truth. What we did would always be there, quietly affecting how we felt and saw each other, even if no one else ever knew.